Picture two people, same city, same neighborhood, similar rent. First person makes $110,000 a year. Walk into their apartment, and you're surrounded. Massive television mounted on the wall, leather sectional that costs 3 months of car payments, kitchen counters buried under appliances still in boxes, closet overflowing with clothes, half with tags attached, spare bedroom converted to storage for things they haven't touched in 2 years. This person opens their banking app with their stomach in a knot. 2 missed paychecks from catastrophe. Credit card balance creeping up. Savings account with 4 figures that never seems to grow. Second person makes $58,000 a year. Walk into their place and you notice space. Breathing room, modest couch that's comfortable, television that works, kitchen with the tools that actually get used, clothes they wear, spare bedroom, that's an actual bedroom. This person checks their account with calm. 22 months of expenses saved. Investing 25% of every paycheck. No debt except a small student loan they're aggressively paying down. Same neighborhood. The person earning half as much has 10 times the financial security. This isn't a story about income. It's about the hidden cost of stuff that almost nobody calculates correctly. My name is Sam, and today I'm walking you through the minimalist money rules that separate people who always have money from people who never do, regardless of what they earn. Not deprivation, not living like a monk, just understanding that every object you own has ongoing costs you've probably never added up. And those costs are quietly destroying your ability to build wealth. If you've ever felt like you make good money but somehow never get ahead, if your home feels cluttered but you can't figure out what to get rid of, if you're tired of managing stuff instead of building something that lasts, stay with me. Subscribe if you want the truth about how physical possessions silently drain wealth. And drop a like if this reframe makes you see your apartment differently. Let me start with something that will change how you think about every purchase for the rest of your life. Everything you own costs money twice. First cost is obvious, the number on the receipt, the transaction, what left your account when you bought it. Second cost is what most people completely ignore, and it's often larger than the first: storage, maintenance, mental energy. Opportunity cost, that treadmill you bought for your fitness resolution takes up 20 square feet when you factor in clearance. In most cities, residential space costs $30 to $50 per square foot annually. That treadmill is costing you $600 to $1,000 a year just in the space it occupies. Even if you're renting and don't think about it that way, you're paying for that square footage. It's implicit rent for exercise equipment that mostly hangs clothes. That boat in your driveway needs winterization, cleaning, registration, insurance, occasional repairs. Industry rule of thumb says annual maintenance runs about 10% of the boat's value. A $30,000 boat costs $3,000 a year to own, even if you never take it out. That's the second cost, the ongoing bleed. Mental energy is part of the second cost too. Every item you own occupies a slice of your attention, needs to be cleaned, organized, maintained, insured, worried about, eventually disposed of. Researchers have found that visual clutter increases cortisol and reduces your brain's ability to focus. Your stuff is stressing you out in ways you can't consciously detect. And then there's opportunity cost. Every dollar locked in possessions is a dollar not invested. That $15,000 home gym setup could have been $15,000 in index funds growing to $60,000 over 15 years. You didn't just buy equipment. You bought equipment instead of future financial freedom. Add up these hidden costs and many possessions cost more to own than they cost to buy. The purchase price is just entry. The ongoing costs continue as long as you possess the item. Minimalists understand this instinctively. They're not avoiding nice things because they hate comfort. They're avoiding things because they've calculated the actual cost and decided most stuff isn't worth it. This leads to the first rule minimalists follow religiously. Rule 1. Calculate cost per use before any purchase. Before buying anything, estimate how many times you'll realistically use it. Divide the total cost by that number. This is cost per use, the only honest measure of value. A $200 jacket worn twice costs $100 per wear. A $400 jacket worn 200 times costs $2 per wear. The expensive jacket is actually cheaper in any way that matters. This calculation destroys most impulse purchases instantly. That $300 kitchen gadget you'll use twice a year costs $150 per use in year 1. That's an absurdly expensive way to accomplish whatever task it performs. Meanwhile, a $30 tool you use weekly costs less than 60 cents per use over the first year. Cost per use also reveals what's genuinely worthwhile. A $2,000 mattress used every night for 10 years costs about 55 cents per use. Extraordinary value for something affecting your health and energy daily. $1,500 espresso machine used daily for 5 years costs under $1 per use, probably saving money versus coffee shops. The math cuts through marketing, emotion, and social pressure. Reveals what actually makes financial sense versus what just feels appealing in the moment. Rule 2. Apply the replacement test to everything you already own. Walk through your home. Look at each item. Ask yourself one question. If this disappeared today, would I spend money to replace it? Be honest. Would you actually buy another fondue set? Would you replace that bread maker collecting dust? Would you repurchase clothes you haven't worn in 18 months? For most items, the answer is no. You wouldn't replace them. They exist through inertia, not intention. Impulse purchases, gifts you felt obligated to keep, remnants of past hobbies you've moved beyond. These items have negative value, cost you space, mental energy, maintenance without corresponding benefit. Minimalists ruthlessly eliminate items that fail the replacement test. Sell what has value, donate what someone could use, discard what serves nobody. Process feels uncomfortable initially, then liberating once complete. The psychological weight of owning things you don't want or need is substantial. Removing that weight creates mental space that's hard to describe, but immediately noticeable. Rooms feel larger. Decisions feel simpler. Cleaning takes half the time. You know where everything is because everything remaining has purpose. Rule 3. Never upgrade out of boredom. There's a pattern I see constantly among people earning good money with nothing to show for it. They upgrade perfectly functional items simply because they're bored or because newer versions exist. Television works perfectly, but the new model has slightly better contrast. Phone operates flawlessly, but the new release has marginally improved camera. Car runs reliably, but the new year has updated styling. Furniture serves its purpose, but they've grown tired of looking at it. These upgrades feel like improvements. They're actually wealth destruction disguised as progress. Minimalists maintain strict policy. Never replace something that functions properly. The phone that makes calls, sends messages, runs apps doesn't need replacement because a newer phone exists. The car that reliably transports you doesn't need replacement because the neighbor bought something shinier. This policy saves enormous amounts over a lifetime. Average person replaces their phone every 2 to 3 years, often while the previous one works perfectly. Over 30 years, this pattern costs $30,000 to $50,000 in unnecessary purchases. Applied across all categories where upgrade culture operates, lifetime waste easily exceeds $200,000. Minimalists escape this by defining functional clearly. Item remains functional until it genuinely fails to serve its purpose. Boredom is not failure. Desire for novelty is not failure. Existence of newer alternatives is not failure. Actual mechanical breakdown or genuine inability to perform required tasks is failure. Everything else is marketing, convincing you to solve problems you don't have. Rule 4. Create friction for spending and ease for saving. Human behavior follows path of least resistance. If spending is easy and saving is difficult, you'll spend. If saving is easy and spending is difficult, you'll save. Minimalists engineer their environment to make the right choice the easy choice. Spending friction looks like removing stored payment info from retailers, requiring 24-hour waiting period before any non-essential purchase, deleting shopping apps, unsubscribing from promotional emails, avoiding stores unless you have specific intended purchase. Saving ease looks like automatic transfers to investment accounts on payday, keeping only small amounts in easily accessible checking, making contributions happen before you see the money, treating savings like fixed expense rather than afterthought. These structural changes matter more than willpower. Willpower depletes throughout the day. Environment is constant. Someone relying on willpower to avoid impulse purchases will eventually fail when tired, stressed, emotional. Someone who deleted the apps and removed their cards simply cannot impulse purchase in that moment. Minimalists don't trust themselves to consistently make good decisions. They design systems that make good decisions automatic. The 24-hour rule alone eliminates roughly 70% of impulse purchases. Most desires for objects fade within a day if not acted on immediately. Rule 5. Count your possessions regularly. Sounds obsessive until you actually do it. Counting forces awareness. Awareness prevents accumulation. Pick a category. Count how many items you own in that category. Write it down. Numbers often shock people who've never examined consumption patterns objectively. How many shirts do you own? Most guess low and discover they have 3 or 4 times what they estimated. How many kitchen gadgets? Pairs of shoes? Items in your junk drawer? Books you'll never read again? The count itself changes behavior. Once you know you own 47 shirts, buying another feels different. You're not adding a shirt. You're bringing your collection to 48. The absurdity becomes visible. Minimalists track key categories over time. Set maximum thresholds. Maybe 30 items of clothing total. maybe 15 books at any given time, maybe one in, one out policy where any new purchase requires removing something existing. These constraints prevent lifestyle creep. Without intentional limits, possessions expand to fill available space. With limits, each addition requires conscious decision about what it's replacing. That friction alone dramatically reduces acquisition. Rule 6. Rent or borrow before you buy. Most items people purchase get used intensively for a short period, then rarely afterward. Excitement of newness fades. Initial enthusiasm decreases. Item joins collection of things owned but seldom touched. Minimalists test this pattern by renting or borrowing before committing to ownership. Want to get into camping? Rent equipment for first few trips. Want to try woodworking? Borrow tools from a friend or use makerspace? Want a kayak? Rent several times before purchasing. This accomplishes two things. First, reveals whether enthusiasm is genuine or temporary. Many interests fade after initial exploration. Better to discover this while renting than after purchasing equipment that collects dust indefinitely. Second, clarifies exactly what you need. First-time campers often buy too much or buy wrong things. Renting lets you learn before committing. When you eventually purchase, you buy precisely what's necessary rather than guessing. The buy-first mentality costs people enormously over lifetimes. Closets and garages across the country contain dusty remnants of abandoned hobbies. Ski equipment from the phase when they thought they'd ski regularly. Photography gear from when they imagined becoming serious photographers. Music equipment from bands that played 2 shows. Minimalists avoid becoming museums of past enthusiasm. Test interests before investing. Maintain flexibility to explore without burden of ownership. Rule 7. Understand the lifestyle multiplier effect. Every possession you own connects to other possessions. Boat requires trailer, hitch-equipped vehicle, storage fees, maintenance supplies, safety equipment, appropriate clothing. Purchase that seems singular actually triggers cascade of supporting purchases. This is the lifestyle multiplier. Major purchases multiply into ecosystems of related expenses. True cost is never just the item itself. Watch how this plays out. Home gym requires flooring, mirrors, storage solutions, ventilation considerations, often renovations to make space suitable. Pool requires chemicals, cleaning equipment, covers, furniture, maintenance tools, often landscaping to complement installation. Motorcycle requires gear, storage, maintenance equipment, often truck or trailer for transportation to riding locations. Minimalists calculate full ecosystem costs before any major purchase. They know $5,000 purchase might actually represent $8,000 or $12,000 when all multiplier expenses are included. Full accounting often transforms what seemed reasonable into something clearly excessive. Multiplier effect works in reverse too. Eliminating one major possession often eliminates entire category of related expenses. Selling the boat means no more storage fees, insurance, registration, maintenance, towing costs. Savings extend far beyond items' value. Rule 8. Define enough before you start earning. Here's something that traps high earners constantly. They never define what enough looks like, so they keep purchasing more without ever arriving at satisfaction. Income increases, so they upgrade lifestyle. New lifestyle becomes normal, so they need another increase to feel progress. Cycle continues indefinitely. People earning $300,000 feel just as financially stressed as people earning $80,000 because expectations and expenses expanded alongside income. Minimalists break this by defining enough before they start earning. Decide in advance what kind of home is sufficient, what car meets needs, what level of material comfort constitutes genuine satisfaction. Then earn toward that target rather than constantly moving the goalpost. Might mean deciding $350,000 home is enough, even if you eventually could afford $600,000. Might mean deciding $30,000 car is enough, even when colleagues drive 70,000 vehicles. Might mean deciding current wardrobe is enough, even as income could support constant upgrades. Defining enough creates finish line. Without it, you're running endless race where lifestyle expansion always outpaces income growth. With it, you reach point where additional income flows entirely to saving and investing rather than consumption. Person who defined enough at $60,000 of annual spending, then started earning 150% builds wealth at extraordinary rate. The $90,000 difference between income and enough goes directly to financial freedom. Meanwhile, someone earning same 150, but constantly redefining enough upward might save almost nothing. Rule 9. Measure wealth by optionality, not accumulation. Conventional view measures wealth by what you have. Houses, cars, possessions, visible markers of success. Minimalists measure differently, by what you can choose. Can you leave job that's destroying your mental health? Can you take 6 months off to handle family emergency? Can you move to new city for relationship? Can you start business without guaranteed income? Can you retire before 65? Can you say no to opportunities that pay well but compromise values? These options represent true wealth, only available to people who've built substantial margin between income and expenses. Person earning $200,000 but spending $195,000 has almost no optionality. Chain to income requirement. Person earning $80,000 but spending $45,000 has extraordinary optionality. Can absorb disruptions, take risks, make choices based on preference rather than financial necessity. Minimalists understand optionality requires liquid resources more than physical possessions. Money tied up in car you don't need is money that can't buy freedom when you need it. Home equity locked in excess house is equity that can't fund career transition or extended sabbatical. This transforms spending decisions. Each purchase isn't just exchanging money for object. It's trading optionality for possession. Is this item worth reducing your ability to make free choices about your life? Sometimes yes, often no. Rule 10. Practice cyclical decluttering rather than annual purging. Most people who attempt minimalism do massive purge, feel great for a few weeks, then gradually accumulate back to starting point. Purge feels productive. Gradual reaccumulation goes unnoticed. Within 2 years, they're right back where they started. Minimalists avoid this through cyclical decluttering rather than annual massive purges, small regular reviews, weekly glances at incoming items, monthly evaluation of one category, quarterly assessment of overall accumulation trends. This cyclical approach catches accumulation early before it rebuilds to overwhelming levels. Removing 3 items per week is manageable and sustainable. Removing 300 items once per year feels overwhelming and often gets postponed indefinitely. Cyclical approach also maintains awareness. When you evaluate possessions regularly, you notice patterns. See which categories tend to accumulate. Recognize which types of purchases you regret. Identify marketing tactics that work on you specifically. That awareness prevents future accumulation. Hard to buy another kitchen gadget when you just evaluated your kitchen gadget collection last month and realized you don't use half of them. Here's what these 10 rules add up to. Not deprivation. Not living like you're broke when you're not. Strategic decisions about what you own based on actual cost instead of surface appeal. The person making $10,000 surrounded by stuff they don't use is not wealthier than the person making $58,000 with space and savings. They've just converted potential wealth into possessions that create ongoing costs without corresponding value. I've watched this play out with people I know. The ones who built actual financial security weren't necessarily the highest earners. They were the ones who understood that stuff is expensive in ways that don't show up on receipts. They calculated the full cost. They defined enough. They created systems that made good decisions automatic. And they built optionality instead of accumulation. That optionality is what wealth actually is. Not how your apartment looks, not what you drive. What you can choose when circumstances change. What you can walk away from. What you can say no to. Physical possessions don't create that. Space between your income and your required expenses creates that. And minimalism isn't about owning less for the sake of owning less. It's about recognizing that most of what you own is quietly preventing you from building what you actually want. If this reframed how you think about the relationship between stuff and money, subscribe. I break down the systems that keep people financially stuck and the mechanics of escaping them. Comment below. What's one category you're going to count this week? I want to know what you discover.